Welcome. Welcome to our 8th, who would have thought, our actual 8th Respectful Workplace Week event. My name is Dr. Shelley Delano Parker. I'm NB Power's industrial psychologist, and I'm also an instructor in the psychology department at UNB, one of the academic co-chairs on the workplace violence and abuse team. And I'm just thrilled and pleased to invite every one of you to our week of awesome seminars. We have a little kickoff PowerPoint that's playing right now. It's going to finish in a second. So if you'll bear with me, it'll go to a blank screen. I'm just going to start it back up again for you as I continue to introduce everybody. So here we go. I'm going to start our slideshow again for those of you who might not have seen the beginning. And welcome again. Okay, a little bit about our team. The Workplace Violence and Abuse Research Team. It's a volunteer team, and we work actually under the Muriel McQueen Ferguson Center for Family Violence Research. Our aim is to understand, prevent, and address issues of workplace violence and abuse. A major strength of our team, it's made up of academic, professional, government, and community members who are absolutely passionate about this particular issue. For 14 years, our team has worked with the province of New Brunswick to have this week, the week after Labor Day, declared as Respectful Workplace Week. I want to note, however, as everybody knows, this has not been possible this year. We've been doing things a little differently because of our pandemic. However, we're also doing things a little bit differently because this year we have an election. So the City of Fredericton has not been able to, the City of Fredericton has been able to make a Respectful Workplace Week declaration, but the province of New Brunswick has not. So not that they're not wanting or believing that it's important, it's just simply because of the timing of our election and how trying to pull everything together to make sure this happens doesn't interfere with the election activities. So UNB, City of Fredericton, and other organizations have actually declared this as Respectful Workplace Week. Over the past 8 years, we have seen our annual event grow tremendously. In our first year, we had one presentation. It was attended by 12 people. And then we went on from that and created a few other presentation events year by year, slowly getting them back and pulling them up so that there were greater numbers. But last year, unbelievable, we held it up at Delta and had an amazing day. We were looking forward to doing that again this year, but again, as we know, because of the pandemic, that wasn't possible. So here we are doing it virtually. Right now, we have over 100 participants registered for this week's webinar series. So that shows the passion not only out there in all the different organizations, but the desire that people have in order to learn more about this particular topic. And this interest speaks to the relevance and importance of the topics in our current social context. And this is why this year's theme is called The Evolving Workplace. We're very thankful to our financial and in-kind contributors who have made this event possible. We would like to acknowledge specifically WorkSafe New Brunswick, GNB's Treasury Board, the Women's Equality Branch, and PEDAL, UNB's Human Resources Department. I keep flipping around because I need to make sure that our slideshow is going for everybody. Here we go again. And Dave Kelly, or Day Kelly and Associates, as well Nicole Smith, Conflict Management. Nicole is a member of our committee as well. Because of their financial support and in-kind support, we're able to keep this as a no-cost event for all participants. For the first time, we're actually able to offer simultaneous translation. And for that, we'd also love to thank our interpreters today. To do the translation, if you have this as part of your Zoom option, there should be a little translation button that comes up for you. And I'll review that in just a moment. Or Nicole is our guru for Zoom. She may want to offer more information associated with that as well. I would also like to give a huge.
And I'm so sorry, Shelley. I just want to jump in and let folks who are trying to get interpretation, we know we're having some technical issues with it. We're working on it now. So hopefully it'll be fixed soon.
Perfect. Thank you. So we will keep an eye on that and see how it goes. And we will certainly let you know as we progress through the seminar when that option becomes available for you. Okay. I would like to give a huge thanks for today's speakers. We have Dr. Paul Mazerow, President and Vice Chancellor of UNB, who will offer opening comments for the kickoff to Respectful Workplace, as well as Angela Legier, a qualified mediator who will be speaking to us about contributing to a respectful, healthy, inclusive virtual workplace. Very timely, very timely. What I would like to bring everybody's attention to as well is that if you could put your Zoom application on mute, that would be really helpful. And all of us will be doing that as well, except for the speaker. And videos, depending on your bandwidth, I guess, you can have videos on or off. However, we would like you to understand that this session is being recorded. So please, if you're going to recognize that the recording may copy personal information, you can let us know, but we're not asking for people to speak directly into the question answer period. What we would like would be for you to simply use your chat option and type in any questions that you may have. Okay, so we will address the questions, but we will not address whom they're coming from. So there's no worry regarding identification, regarding being recorded, but your question will simply be asked. So if you could just use your chat function for your question answer period, that would be really helpful. At the end of the session, there will be a poll, and Nicole will give more information associated with that, but please be prepared for it. So if possible, stay on a few minutes later just to complete that. Okay, so before we get too much ahead of ourselves, I would like to introduce Dr. Paul Mazerow. Dr. Mazerow is the 19th President and Vice Chancellor of the University of New Brunswick. An internationally recognized criminologist, Dr. Mazerow is a proud native of New Brunswick and an alumnus of UNB. He has maintained close professional, family, and personal ties to the province over his entire career. Paul is also a professor in the Department of Sociology. Dr. Mazerow spent his early career at the University of Cincinnati, followed then by positions at the University of Queensland, the Queensland Crime and Misconduct Commission, and Griffith University. Dr. Mazerow is an active researcher. His research interests include examining the processes that shape criminal offending across the life course, the consequences of violent victimization for criminal offending, intimate partner violence, youth violence, and homicide, as well as policy development informed by this research. Dr. Mazerow's international reputation as a research leader in criminology has allowed him to build an international network of collaborators, which has included project involvement with UNB's Muriel McQueen-Ferguson Center for Family Violence. Please, everybody, let's welcome Dr. Paul Mazerow. He will give the opening comments.
Thank you, Shelley. I hope you can hear me okay.
Absolutely.
Great. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today about this important, very important topic, one of which that is close to heart for many of us. I just want to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge that our campuses here at UNB stand on traditional Wolastoqey land, and the river that runs through our cities of St. John and Fredericton, where our campuses are, is known as the Wolastoq, along which live the Wolastoqey, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. And as you know, Wolastoq is also known as St. John River. So again, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. And it's encouraging that so many people are involved on this call. So from around New Brunswick. So I think, Shelley, you said over 100 people signed up. So I think that just reinforces the importance of this topic, and I want to commend the work that you're all doing, and signing up for these webinars is terrifically important. As you know, since 2014, the Workplace Violence and Abuse Research Team at the Muriel McQueen Ferguson Center has been hosting this event during Respectful Workplace Week. So that just shows a long-standing commitment to this important work. And obviously this year is very different, but I think you'll agree that despite our fact that we're connecting virtually, it doesn't undermine the importance of this topic of understanding our workplaces, where the challenges are. How do we build more respectful, inclusive, tolerant workplaces, given where work fits within our culture? So I would argue, and I'm sure you agree, that respectful workplaces are vital for a healthy society. It's really integral that people feel safe and respected at work so that they can realize their full potential as employees. And if you reflect upon your own journey in the workplace, and I'm sure you, like me, can all think back to times where we might have experienced or have friends who've experienced toxic work environments, those are unforgettable experiences for all the wrong reasons. They obviously leave scars on people. So they help reinforce the importance of the work that you're all doing, the work that we need to do as employers to ensure that our workplaces are free of harassment, and they're committed to professional workplace environments. But if you think about work generally, let's consider some of the wider contexts. Think about the importance of work in our culture. People spend a lot of time at work. People ask questions, where do you work? What kind of work do you do? So we know culturally work is a really important part of our society. We know that people spend a great deal of time at work. Full-time workers spend 30 or 40 hours a week. Some people spend much, much more than that. We know that in the workplace, across all workplaces, but it's magnified in some workplaces, there's a sheer scale of harassment, bullying, microaggressions going on in the workplace, verbal abuse, mental abuse, etc. And we know that this can vary by the type of profession. The health professions are particularly it's particularly magnified for nurses and paramedics and ambulance workers, etc. We know in the criminal justice field, where my own background spent the last 30 years or so in corrections and policing, there's a great deal of workplace abuse that goes on. But the whole sheer scale of abuse is widespread, and it's be it physical or emotional, it's consequential. I noted recently a 2016 study from Statistics Canada that looked at 9,000 respondents across the 10 provinces of people aged 15 to 64, and actually found that 1 in 5 women had experienced harassment at work at some time over the past year, and about 1 in 8 men. So we know that workplace harassment is gendered. We also know it's particularly magnified for men who are homosexual and women generally, and also for Aboriginal women compared to non-Aboriginal women, based on this survey of 9,000 respondents. So we know that the statistics bear this out, that there's a very high prevalence of abuse in our workplaces, and perhaps that's not surprising when you see the level of incivility in our culture, when you see politicians yelling at each other all the time. There's models available in our culture to model bad practices, be it by politicians or other leaders. And so it just reinforces the importance of leadership at this time. And I can't overstate the importance of this issue, in part because of the consequences. And I know that all of you will be aware of the consequences of workplace abuse and violence and harassment are not only direct, but they're also indirect. And they show up in increased amounts of sick time, leave from work, high levels of turnover, high levels of attrition, but also physically, people are impacted, and mentally are impacted by the stress that's associated with an abusive workplace, high levels of harassment, etc. So it really reinforces the importance of the work of employers to understand what's going on in the workplace, to measure the problems, to have things like clear policies, reporting lines, commitment to integrity, and a commitment to a culture of professionalism, so that everybody knows that they matter in the workplace, that there's a commitment to respect and inclusion. I should say, on a personal level, as was Shelley mentioned, I'm a criminologist by training, and I have worked on a very large amount of studies on workplace whistleblowing. In Australia, I was involved with what's called the Whistling While They Work study, which studied over 10,000 respondents in federal and state level public institutions. And a lot of key messages came from that study, not the least of which was the need for policies, the need for certain cultures of professionalism, and having clear reporting lines for reporting complaints and having internal disclosures. But I guess this all reinforces the importance of this issue, and that we need to have workplaces and employers, and we need to have leaders recognizing their obligations for having inclusive workplaces, having tolerant workplaces, that it's not only the right thing to do, there's legal obligations for employers. So we need to understand what are the conditions which foster respectful workplaces, what are the conditions that foster professional workplaces, and what are the conditions which enable everyone to feel comfortable and free of harassment and abuse in the workplace. And so I think by increasing our understanding of these issues, we can help improve not only policies and practices, but improve cultures across the workplaces, because we know that people spend a lot of time, and they have, we want them to feel free of abuse and to feel supported. And I should say that these kinds of issues are in some ways magnified by COVID-19. Even though many of us are working differently, it doesn't change the fact that our workplaces are differentiated, but the commitment to professionalism and inclusion and understanding is no less important. We know that workplaces around the province are stepping forward and they're voicing the importance of this cause. I'm proud to say that UNB is part of this movement, and I note that our university has previously signed the declarations for respectful workplaces and will be doing so again in 2020. We're very passionate about respectful workplaces at UNB. It's something that we're committed to, having this inclusive culture and advancing diversity in all its forms. As a university, we've got obviously lots of roles, but one is making sure that the next generation of graduates are going to make a positive contribution to our economy and to their workplaces, that we're fostering tolerance and understanding. And we want to make sure that our graduates are understanding the importance of equity, diversity, inclusion, and taking those good practices to their own workplaces in their careers. We know we're not perfect. No institution is perfect, but quite frankly, we need to all make a commitment to this and try to move forward in productive ways. Our strategic plan, which has recently been approved, identifies as one of its pillars a commitment to being values informed and people focused. And it also has an all-inclusive commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so those conditions require us to work hard, to do better, to understand how do we build a workplace which allows people to realize their full potential. So I want to just close by saying congratulations to the work of the Workplace Violence and Abuse team. I think what you're doing is so very important. It's really important work. It's not only looking at research, but it's looking at translation into practice and opportunities to identify model practices for workplaces all to learn from. So I support your efforts and I commend them, and I'll obviously continue to do so during my time at UNB. And so indeed, because of your great hard work, the government of New Brunswick, as you've said, Shelley, has identified Respectful Workplace Week. I think it was back in 2007. So that's really why we're here today. This is Respectful Workplace Week, something that I'm delighted to be part of. So I do commend you and thank you for your participation. Enjoy the webinars and keep the dialogue going. We can all do better. I look forward to meeting again. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those wonderful words. It's so important when we have an opening to a week filled with seminars devoted exclusively to the concept of respect, that we make sure that as well the topics of inclusion and diversity are included so primarily throughout all of our discussions, because respect is not just, you know, as Dr. Maslow stated, it's not just how we interact with each other, but it has to be a culture. It has to be our attitude. It has to be how passionate we are as humans to recognize that we are responsible for the culture and the civilization that we're going to pass on to younger people who are going through the education experience today. So it's up to us to make sure that we're leading by example. And having said that, understanding that these times are different. We recognize the pandemic influence on everything that we're doing, including our ability to be respectful. And recognizing that we're doing most of our work now virtually, meaning not in person, we also have to recognize that we have a very important expert as part of our team who actually has done research and wants to put on our next seminar, which is all about the importance of having a respectful, healthy, inclusive, virtual workplace. So this is new for us, and we're very, very, very eager to hear what Angela Levesque, or I'm sorry, I'm saying Angela Levesque, and I don't understand why. I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize, Angela. Angela Legier is going to tell us. And what you need to know is that Angela is a qualified mediator, very critical role in today's environment, particularly within the workplace. And she works as a conflict management practitioner with the Department of National Defense. Angela has over 20 years experience working with a number of departments and agencies within the federal and provincial public service. She's a community member of our workplace violence and abuse research team, and also a steering committee member of the New Brunswick Community-Based Mediation. Angela is an experienced facilitator. She enjoys working in the area of workplace well-being and contributing to a healthy workplace environment by offering informal conflict resolution services. So everyone, let's welcome Angela Legier. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you for the introduction, Shelley. So my next step here is just to do my screen share. If you'd give me a moment, please.
And while you're setting that up, Angela, what I would like everybody to do, if you don't mind, is to put your microphones on mute. I have a message saying that there's a lot of feedback and we want to hear your words clearly. So please, if everybody can just simply cooperate, and with our technology know-how, we can certainly put everything on mute. So thank you. Over to you. Let's hear it, Angela.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Shelley?
I was on mute. I can hear you. And one more comment. I see our English and French interpretation option is now available. So there's a little button at the bottom of your taskbar, everybody, and it says interpretation. You are able to use it now. Thank you.
So good afternoon, bonjour all. This is fantastic. I know when I last looked at the number of the participants, I think we had crept above the 100 participant mark. So thank you for your participation this afternoon. And for those of you that are just joining the webinar, I just want to remind you that Shelley had mentioned earlier on that this webinar is being recorded. So please gauge your participation appropriately, and I thank you for that. So the presentation I'm offering today is about contributing to a respectful, healthy, and inclusive virtual workplace. So what are the objectives of today's webinar? So firstly, discover how employees, supervisors, and managers can work together and maintain respect in a virtual workplace. Understand challenges employees, supervisors, and managers may experience in the virtual workplace, especially during COVID-19. And learn how to turn obstacles into opportunities to support respectful, healthy, inclusive virtual workplaces. And hopefully to encourage each of you as participants to commit to one change to enhance your work environment. So I believe it's always important to start with a common understanding of what we mean by respectful, healthy, and inclusive workplaces. So many definitions exist, and we'll use the ones that are referenced in the Respectful, Healthy, and Inclusive Workplace Initiative Toolkit from Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada. So a virtual team, also known as a geographically dispersed team, distributed team, or remote team, is a group of individuals who work across time, space, and organizational boundaries with links strengthened by webs of communication technology. So just like we're using our Zoom technology to support today's webinar. A respectful workplace is where workplace relationships are characterized by courtesy, dignity, and good faith. Employees act respectfully towards each other and contribute positively to the workplace environment. A healthy workplace is where physical, mental, and social health, as well as the overall well-being of the employees, is supported through proactive initiatives undertaken across the organization. And an inclusive workplace is where diverse values, cultures, religions, and views are respected. So leveraging differences enhances creativity and supports better decision-making. My apologies there. Technology, I'm not always that tech savvy, so I apologize for the delay. So some of the key skills of successful virtual team members include strong communicator, reliable, high emotional intelligence, resilient, ability to prioritize, results-oriented, self-motivated, collaborative, strong work ethic, works independently or works well independently, organized, and adaptable. Sounds great, eh? So all this while working from home too. So I wish I was one of these superhumans. So unfortunately, reality is much different. We anticipated taking conference calls by the pool, sipping a cool drink with an umbrella in it, but working from home during a pandemic is a different experience entirely. Hence, the evolving workplace, which is the theme of this year's Respectful Workplace Week and our series of webinars. Okay, so back to the evolving workplace. What are some possible new realities and challenges besides just working with new technology like you're seeing me experiment with today? So family members are always present. A lack of boundaries, a lack of resources, unhealthy behaviors. And if you're joining us from New Brunswick today or many other provinces across Canada, students, children's schooling is back in session, and some of which will be happening in our homes as well. Family and friends who are ill, isolation, regular support networks are disrupted or broken, household chores, no work or life separation. And we're going to explore that in a little bit more detail further on in today's webinar. Lack of support from management, inability to meet work deadlines, children and pets on Zoom calls. So I know in my household today, I have a daughter that's a teenage daughter that's not back to school, and so she's managing, hopefully, you not having to hear my dog bark in the background today. The fear of leaving home and excessive consumption of, and in quotation, bad things. So for example, food, alcohol, drugs, screen time, etc. So what can we do to protect our mental or psychological well-being while working from home? We need to choose the right technique. Stressors, both good and bad, can weigh down on us like we're carrying a huge backpack. We need to find techniques that work for us to lighten the load. So I'm going to talk about a few different techniques because everyone is different and everyone's situation is different. We all need to find the technique or combination of techniques that works best for us. Okay. So the importance of detachment. So a key element of replenishing your mental energy is what we call psychological detachment. This refers to the act of mentally switching off from work when you're not at work. So this is from an article by a professor of work and organizational studies about the importance of detachment, or mentally switching off when you leave work. Studies have shown that remote workers tend to work longer hours because it's always there. So who hasn't said, I'll just check my email one more time before dinner. I'll just answer this email quickly before bed. Don't do it. I've had to train myself to leave work when I close my laptop. This means no more checking emails, even though I can. So often we've talked about workplace, work-life balance, and now we're talking more about work-life integration. I had a colleague once tell me, even prior to the pandemic, when he had opportunities to telework, he'd bring his laptop home with him in the evening, and it would often land in sort of the heart of his home, which was his kitchen, or the island space in his kitchen. And I remember one time him sharing with a group of people that he realized he had to put it elsewhere, that he started tucking it away in a closet or in another room when outside of regular work hours, because just the sight of his laptop would make him start to think about work things or what he had left to do. So I always, I keep that in mind, and it's helped me to have somewhat of a detachment from my work while working from home, but outside of those work hours, which is so important. So what are some tips for enhancing mental health when working from home? So firstly, it's really important to set up a dedicated workspace. So if possible, work in a different room than the one you spend your leisure time in. If you don't have the option of a different room, then try to tidy away everything that might remind you of work at the end of each day. So I know that's definitely easier said than done, but definitely a good practice if it's something you can adopt. Develop a schedule which includes phases of focus work as well as breaks. So remember, when you create that schedule, be sure to build in those breaks, even if you're putting them into your calendar. It's really, really important to have those pauses. And organize your email communication and reserve dedicated times for responding to emails. So set up dedicated times for work and leisure and stick to these times. And try and refrain from all forms of work-related communication during non-work time. So true or false? In a virtual team, when we ignore the issues that are causing conflict, eventually the problem will go away. So I invite you to use that chat box and make sure that it's chat box to everyone, and share what you think your response is to this answer. So T for true, F for false.
Shelley.
So what are you seeing in there, Shelley?
I'm just reporting back to you. We're getting all Fs, all false.
Thank you. So
and
why,
including a totally false.
so why is this false? So just as in face-to-face team situations, issues do not dissolve. They need to be addressed, discussed and should involve some form of resolution or agreement. And it may be more difficult to determine there is a problem in the virtual team, but it will surface and it should be addressed. So open and honest conversations are key in building bonds of trust, strong relationships, and engagement. Holding regular conversations within your teams about respect, health, and inclusion creates a climate that is conducive to addressing issues before they escalate and become too challenging for the team to deal with on its own. So having these conversations also allows us to reflect on the impact that our behavior has on others and helps us to become more self-aware, which can lead to some concrete and positive changes in behaviors. So hopefully implementing some of the ideas that come out of today's webinar will contribute to improvements in the workplace and to individual team well-being. So just again, a few points, and it mentions at the bottom here, as a respectful team is one that dissects a problem, but not each other. So something important to keep in mind. Okay. So what are the top 3 challenges you have experienced in creating or contributing to a respectful virtual team? And again, I invite you to use the chat and even indicate maybe the top challenge, and or if you choose not to use the chat, just to reflect on that, please. Shelley, do you see anything coming up there?
Yeah, actually, I was just getting it in a minute. We have one comment, and an individual has stated that their challenge was getting people to talk to each other and not just to me as their manager. Another individual said, you know, the isolation and lack of consistent communication. Oh, we're getting lots of comments in now, Angela. Written words can be harsher than face-to-face, and that is so true, isn't it? Group chats and negativity. Here's one, lack of engagement. And we're continuing, asking employees to speak clearly during virtual meetings and only one speaker at a time. Making sure everyone feels comfortable sharing in a way that's comfortable for them. The inability to read body language. So that's becoming a theme, you know, the inability to recognize the context of what people are saying, for example. Without body language, you can't do that. A willingness for a team member to say something a bit disrespectful than they wouldn't say face to face. Harder to feel the pulse of the team, and getting people to focus. Chest thumping, people braver when behind a screen. And again, we all know the research that identifies that last comment as well. So those are my comments I've received so far. Oh, we have one more. Monopolizing the meeting. Punctuality from everyone for online meetings. It's just as important as in person. The tone of the message.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those with the larger group. And I always appreciate hearing from participants about what their experience is in terms of this new reality and the evolving workplace and more virtual teams. So in addition to what you shared based on the chat and what participants shared, some of the top challenges experienced in creating a respectful work team that have been previously identified include things such as building trust, poor communication or misunderstanding, which I think was mentioned as well. Large teams, poor productivity. We heard the piece around lack of engagement, differences in work ethic and cultures, lack of personal connection, so less effective relationships. That's harder to sometimes connect through this new virtual world. Lack of commitment, lack of clarity and direction. And sometimes, depending upon who our colleagues are, we can also run into where they're located, time zone issues. So what are the best practices to manage these challenges? So this afternoon, I'm just going to give a few examples of tips for turning obstacles into opportunities. And what I'm thinking is that as we go through some of the obstacles, we'll go back to the chat box for a few minutes in between as well and see what participants have learned or experienced of some of the obstacles and maybe how they turn them into opportunities. Okay. So the first obstacle we're going to look at is building trust. So building trust is more challenging when you can't meet face to face. So when we try and flip that into an opportunity, especially when we're working in these virtual teams or virtual environments, it's important to schedule frequent teleconferences, and during the business time, also at some point, to try and build in some social time so that employees, supervisors, managers can continue to build rapport with one another and get to know one another. So make yourself accessible to your team and build in response time. So try to schedule face-to-face meetings. So face-to-face meetings, currently it might mean something that's happening using technology. I heard someone mention MS Teams, Zoom. There's all sorts of technologies out there. And for some folks who are working in the workplace, it may be having small gatherings with those physical distances during this period. So encourage peer-to-peer relationships in your team. So things like mentoring and coaching. So definitely get to know where the strengths are in your team and pair people appropriately so that they can support one another. Help to create rules to reduce uncertainty and enhance trust in social groups. So it might be something as simple as, what's our turnaround time to respond to emails so that people can know what the expectations are. Coach team members to avoid long legs in responding to unilateral shifts and failure to follow up on commitments. And ensure team members understand the importance of speed, consistency, and responsiveness. So maybe during this period, the speed and consistency might have been impacted by all of those other challenges that we spoke of earlier. So we have to keep that in mind as well as we're working remotely and virtually. And four, to ensure that expectations are clear. And if they aren't, clarify expectations. And be sure to share as much information as you can. So I guess right now, Shelley, I'm just going to go invite participants once again to go into the chat box. So when you think about building trust in a team who may be working remotely, virtually, what are some opportunities that you've discovered as maybe a best practice that you'd like to share with others who are participating today? So we'll take a few minutes to do that, or if it's something you just want to reflect on, that would be great as well. So again, I'm going to invite you to input some things into the chat box.
Hi, Angela. I'll just give you an update. I guess people need a few minutes to think this one through.
Sure.
So, yeah. So far, we've not received any, but
just a reminder. So when you think of that obstacle of building trust or mistrust within the team.
So we do have one individual who made a really good comment. Hold regular scheduled meetings so that consistency is achieved, even if it is just a check-in.
Yeah.
Another is meeting once or twice a week will help. Oh, there's a few more. Individual accountability, cultural awareness, and mutual respect. Build a feeling of community and reciprocity. Asking for clarification as necessary, particularly if tone seems off. That's a really important one. especially if you know the person and you're recognizing that they don't quite appear to be themselves. Taking the time to engage socially, where social encounters have become rare. A phone call can mean a lot. And have a daily check-in, and we always do a new icebreaker to get to know the team members better. Also, have each member take a turn in setting it up and facilitating the meeting. Set up a buddy system where people check in on another person, and we can build trust by allowing all team members to share what they're working on. So everyone trusts that all team members are working as hard as the others, especially when we can't see each other at the office.
Okay. Wonderful. I knew there would be some opportunities shared with the wealth of experience of our participants today. So thank you all for sharing those. And so when we turn that obstacle into an opportunity by implementing some of the ideas that are shared on the chart, but have also been shared by participants, some of the potential outcomes can be work products are of high quality and delivered on time. All team members are responsive to each other. We get a chance to appreciate the strengths within the team and have an increased understanding of each other's work. So how our work is integrated and how one's input impacts, someone else's on the team's output or input as well. And there's a clear appreciation of how individual efforts relate to the success of the overall team. And one thing that was mentioned, Shelley, and it made me think back, if anyone had a chance to attend one of Shelley's presentations last year, it was all about that written email communication. So thank you for talking about how, if you recognize the tone in the email is a little bit off, go with your gut. And maybe that is a good moment in time to, I say, go old school, pick up the telephone and have a conversation. Sometimes we're not doing that as much as we used to because we're becoming more and more reliant on the emails and other forms of technology. But certainly a phone call is a fantastic idea, and I know that was mentioned. So another obstacle that we can run into is, and it can be in a virtual environment or in-person environment, is the piece around miscommunication. So relationship building should be an ongoing process, and your job as a team leader and also as a member of a team is to develop the capabilities of for yourself, your team members, your colleagues. So what are some opportunities around that obstacle? So sometimes it's helpful to give written and or verbal instructions and messages that are clear and unambiguous. So make sure that the clarity is there. Encourage open dialogue and clarify goals and guidelines. Be direct in questions asked and delivering praise and constructive feedback. Sometimes when there's that disconnect, sometimes it's even more important for people who are working virtually to receive the feedback. So the constructive feedback and validating work well done. Seek clarification when you're unsure. And if the team is large, consider subgroups. I know from my personal experience since working from home, I've had the opportunity to work in smaller working groups, but that consisted of people from other regions. So whether it's other regions within New Brunswick or other regions across the country, it's a great opportunity for collaboration and a sharing of ideas. And so get the pulse of the team and pay attention to what engages the team. So now I'm going to go back to you participants, checking in with you again when we're talking about the obstacle of miscommunication. What are some opportunities that you've implemented to support a healthier, more inclusive, respectful virtual workplace?
Now, hi, Angela. I just want to mention that when the chats come in, I try to review every one of them, but unfortunately there has been a few that I've not been able to get to. they are coming in quickly, so that's that's a very positive thing. But I just want to apologize to anybody if yours was not read before our webinar started back up again. So I will try. However, we do have a few that have come in right now, so I'm going to try and review those. Okay, we have setting up a buddy system where people check in. We've reviewed that. Encouraging phone chats as part of the buddy system. Be frank and direct, but also respectful when providing feedback. Be consistent, and sometimes it is necessary to repeat both verbally and in writing. Asking for clarification. If the team is large and all team members are not known on a personal basis, do a bit of collection of data about the age and stage of participants. On miscommunication, we are definitely picking up the phone more. There's been way too many emails. Cheers. That's from Jeff. Give speaker the opportunity to finish speaking. And lots of one-on-one, especially with those who may not voice their concerns within a group setting. And that's what we've received so far.
Okay, wonderful, Shelley. And I don't envy your role, because I know we have over 100 participants on the line. So just for clarity, I'm really just asking Shelley to provide some samplings, and hopefully you folks can also see what one another's putting in the box if you're sending out your chat to everyone, and that you're able to share and view that way. So thank you for that sampling, Shelley.
Okay, and thank you.
And again, integrating, implementing those opportunities can lead to potential outcomes of a more optimal productivity, advanced by certainty, because folks things are clearer and tasks are carried out more confidently, and team members display a positive attitude towards work. Okay. And so if we look at the obstacle of large teams, and here I only have one example for the opportunity, so I'm anxious to hear what others have to share as well. So there are more opportunities for miscommunication and more difficulties to build in team cohesion when a team is large. So the numbers can definitely impact that, right? So again, consider subgroups or working groups. And so I'm really anxious to hear what others have to say about working with large teams, and what opportunities have they found to support a positive outcome. So feel free to indicate some thoughts, some best practices into the chat box again.
And you certainly have created a challenge for everybody, Angela, because I know speaking to and with large teams on a virtual platform, it can be quite unnerving, because for one thing, you're not sure exactly how many people are out there, but you're attempting to meet everybody's needs as well, plus receive feedback. And as we know just from the chat, it's difficult to make sure that everybody's feedback's being recognized. So on a meeting with a large number of individuals, it's a challenge. So like you, I'm curious as to see how everybody's dealing with this. We have a few comments. One would be valuing those opinions that are different from our own, even if we don't agree with them, is a more powerful tool to building consensus among people and groups we communicate with. And we have give a chance to everyone to participate. So that's what we have at this moment.
Yeah, most definitely. So if you're considering subgroups, it's also really important that all folks have the opportunity to participate in different subgroups. So that can be definitely something to consider when you're building subgroups or working groups. And the potential outcome can be easier to communicate and manage expectations for projects when working with subgroups. And Shelley, sorry, did you have something else to add?
Sorry, Angela, I didn't want to interrupt you. No, there were a few more comments coming in, but yeah, and again, it's just one individual talking about the challenge the team leader has in trying to draw out less communicative members. And just knowing that members might want to acknowledge the difficulty that the leader's having and show appreciation.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's great just to be self-aware, to have a knowledge of individuals in your team or in the team that may participate in different ways. So they may not in a large forum feel as comfortable sharing, but maybe in a smaller group they're more open to participating and sharing. So that can create an opportunity as well. The next potential obstacle we're going to look at is poor productivity. So it's important that everyone shares a common understanding of what the group is responsible for and how each member contributes to the outcome. So some possible opportunities are: analyze the reasons the group members are failing to deliver. So what's behind all that, right? So be curious. Make sure the expectations are well defined and work with individual team members to develop a learning plan if required. So certainly within a lot of organizations, we talk about LPs or learning plans. So really utilize those and maximize those. And that's going to build into that next piece around building comprehensive performance objectives, and ensure you meet periodically with your employer to review and update and encourage open dialogue. And I just want to make mention, if anyone who's participating today wants to have a better understanding of how to support that opportunity, we do have a webinar on Thursday, which is specifically focusing on performance management in the remote workplace. So I encourage you, if you haven't registered, to register for Thursday's presentation as well, as long as to register for Wednesday and Fridays, and we'll speak to those later. So offer coaching and mentoring, and allow flexibility in how the work is done. So any other thoughts from participants around what opportunities they've implemented to increase productivity within the team during this difficult time? What have you done? Feel free to add it to the chat.
Okay, Angela, this seems to be quite an interesting topic for a lot of individuals. And again, you mentioned this quite earlier on in your presentation, so it's something that a few people may have been thinking about. Members might want to acknowledge that we need to have clear expectations, clear goals and measures. And again, that was a previous comment as well, where an individual said, you know, clear goals and delineated responsibilities. So it seems as though we need clarity on a lot. The other theme seems to be to tie employees' work to the higher strategic goals, help them understand what their contribution means, celebrate the successes of team members, and demonstrate the value of their work and how it matters to senior management, for example. And one more would be to create clear lines of responsibilities and expectations.
Okay, great. So some great examples of how to engage employees, and the whole piece around clear expectations, how huge that is, because I heard that mentioned a few times. So what is the potential outcome? So team cohesion is established and hopefully maintained. Goals are met. Everyone is clear on the expectations, and that was echoed in the chat box, I think. And members have autonomy in their work. So definitely when folks might be working virtually or remotely and maybe working more on their own, it's important that they do have autonomy in their work. Okay. So more tips. So the obstacle being difference in work ethics and cultures. So opportunities, encourage team members to describe their backgrounds, the value they hope to add to the group, and the way they prefer to work. So talking about differences or similarities in the workplace. Encourage open dialogue and celebrate milestones, and build in fun activities that allow team members to celebrate their differences and find out more about each other. Any additional thoughts around what are the opportunities there around what some see as an obstacle is difference in work ethics and cultures?
That's an excellent, excellent question to ask of everybody. And, you know, in particular, when Dr. Mazerl kicked off the whole webinar today and our Respectful Workplace Week with his topic of inclusion and diversity and how critical it was to developing our overall work culture. So by you bringing it in as an obstacle and how can we turn it into an opportunity, it's you know, such a high prioritized topic that we have to recognize today. So again, I think people are just, you know, kind of taking their time and trying to word their comments, but I guess we can just encourage you to add to the chat as much as possible, everybody.
Thanks, Shelley. So when we talk about the opportunities, what's the potential outcome? So we talk about discrimination, stereotyping, and gossiping are reduced. And again, when we talk about those potential outcomes, I'm going to just mention as well, we do have a workshop on Friday, and it's a panel who will be sharing with respect to experiences of systemic racism in the workplace. So definitely I encourage folks to participate in that as well. Enables a quicker integration of new team members as well. So when we get to know the folks in our team and more on a personal level, that can help as well. The next obstacle we're going to look at is lack of personal connection. And I think for folks who are used to showing up in the same physical location on a regular basis, that this has been a real challenge for a lot of people, that personal connection. So what's the possible opportunity? So develop a team charter that explains how team members will work with each other. So when you do a team charter, it's the members of the team that develops that together. Encourage face-to-face whenever possible. So if you can incorporate some sort of technology that will allow the face-to-face interaction, or again, those opportunities to come together while physical distancing and respecting the health recommendations during this period. So when onboarding new members, bring them to your location and pair them with a buddy. So there's new employees, so how do you integrate those folks and help them feel connected to others within the team? So help employees develop interpersonal skills by using emotional intelligence. So there's different tools that can be used, emotional intelligence being one of them, and encourage open discussion on challenges. So I'm going to go back to the participants today again, and if you've had individuals who've experienced a lack of personal connection within the team, what's something you might have done that's been supportive?
Maybe I'll just add something to that, Angela, to try and get people started with their responses. I know I had a new team member join my group. It actually was a summer intern. And now that we've completed our summer session for most student employments, when I look back as to how this individual must have felt, you know, as a young person new to an integrated work group that had been in place for 10 plus years, and he was new and in the midst of a pandemic. So how do you manage this? And essentially, it was what you've just said, looking at it from an opportunity and encouraging those face-to-face videos, but asking him actually to do a little presentation on a topic that I knew was near and dear to his heart. And he did, and he educated the rest of the group. So it worked well from that regard.
Wonderful.
And we do have a few comments. And as one person says, therein lies the rub. The pandemic has wrecked our ability to connect interpersonally. And I'm all out of ideas. So Anthony, that was a really good comment to make. Another is encourage peer review of work products prior to them being sent to the supervisor. And I had a telephone call to the new team member to introduce myself. So those are really good comments.
Wonderful. Yeah. Like I said, old school, go back to the telephone, have those conversations. Great ideas.
Yeah. And we have one more. I'll just add it. It's kind of a cute one. Have not tried it, but how about a welcome party and a goodbye, good luck party? If the video's available, share a muffin and a coffee or a cake.
Nice. So those virtual coffee breaks, or again, I recall even prior to COVID, on occasion when I was working on a team that was a virtual team because we were spread cross country, inviting a colleague to a coffee or a tea break, and so typically it would be just a time to chat, to get to know one another. But at the same time, there were always these opportunities to share things that were work related and learn from one another as well. So what are some potential outcomes as we build on personal connection in the workplace? We have engaged individuals who contribute to the team. There's a sense of personal accountability to the team. Team members see how their work fits into the big picture, which can be really important for some. Greater connection to team members, positions and perspectives are understood. So certainly in the work that I do in the area of conflict management, it's really important that we understand one another's perspectives, and we usually don't understand until we get a chance to have conversations and talk about them. And colleagues assist each other with problem solving when there's more of a personal connection within the team. Okay. And so this is the last section of our chart on obstacles. So we're going to look at lack of commitment, lack of clarity and direction, and time zone issues. So lack of commitment, some opportunities can be, again, back to that clear expectations piece of what is expected of each team member and regular check-ins. And that was mentioned earlier as well. And it's nice when folks do have their regular check-ins built into their calendar, because then they can preserve that time if they know well in advance. Ongoing virtual training programs to build skills in meeting management, problem solving, decision making, and other team processes. And certainly right now there's a lot of introduction of new technology as well. So having the appropriate training to support that technology is helpful. And then the potential outcome is members will feel more responsible for their outputs as a result. And lack of clarity and direction. You may not see that there is a problem until it's too late. So clear expectations, performance measurement, and regular check-ins. So there's some common themes here as well. And use appropriate technologies to share progress, and coordinate team updates and encourage team discussions on suggestions to overcome challenges they may be encountering. So any thoughts people or participants would like to insert in the chat around the potential obstacles of lack of commitment, of lacking clarity and direction while working in a virtual team?
And we don't have any comments yet, Angela, but you know what? These are really, really so direct and so real in terms of obstacles in our workplace.
And so again, the potential outcome when there are clear expectations, team cohesion is built, team members feel comfortable discussing potential issues and sharing best practices and overcoming these issues. And then last but not least, it might not apply to everyone that's participating today, the time zone issues, because here in the Atlantic, we do work in a smaller zone, but I know because we've been able to go virtual this year with the webinars, that we do have folks participating across different time zones. So to take that into consideration in case that applies to your workplace as well. So rotate meeting schedule. Certainly acknowledge and thank members for shifting their lunch break to participate. Sometimes it's hard. Some people take their lunch at noon, some at 1, but definitely recognize if there is a possibility that people might be participating during what would have been maybe their regularly scheduled lunch break if they have something in particular. And raise awareness and provide tools to manage the time difference. So what's the potential outcome? Your team is going to appreciate that you're taking the time zones into consideration if that's something that applies to your workplace.
It's a really good comment to make, because actually you're hitting on, you know, another aspect of inclusion and diversity, and it's one that's created by time zones.
And so I'm getting very near the end of my webinar presentation today, and I thank all of you that have been able to stay on and participate. But most importantly, this is really what I want to leave you with, is to make time for self-care. So I know we talk about it a lot, we hear about it a lot, but do we practice it? So practicing self-care isn't selfish. It is essential to maintaining positive mental health. So back to basics work best. So get sufficient sleep. So we should aim for 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep and maintain proper sleep hygiene for the rest that you need. Eat healthily. So ensure proper balanced nutrition throughout your workday. Stay hydrated. So I know sometimes I can sit down and I recognize that I don't eat healthily. And then by the end of the day, I have a headache. So that's one that I continue to work at. So we all have our challenges. And exercise regularly. So your gym may be closed, but the outdoors are not. So get outside for a daily 20 to 30-minute walk. So if you integrate that into a break or your lunch break or at the end of the day, we're certainly moving into a beautiful season of nice weather. So I encourage you to step outside and enjoy the fresh air and breathe. So just as I'm getting closer to closing up today's session, one of the objectives was that I was hoping that through your participation in today's webinar and hearing some of the tips, but also some of the best practices that others have shared with us throughout the presentation, just wondering, is there one change that you commit to implementing moving forward to contribute to a healthier work environment? So I invite you to reflect on that. And if there was something that was sort of like an aha moment that you want to share, feel free to add it in the chat box for others to see.
What a great challenge. We have an individual who said, you know what, you're making great points here. So that's amazing, Angela, thank you. Coffee time with others. So emulating virtual, remaining positive. And here's a great shout out for you. Thanks for the great presentation and the sharing of ideas. We'll try to, even in retirement, have clear, concise expectations. And another is I commit to modeling civil, healthy, and inclusive behaviors and not being shy to speak with others about these positive behaviors. And again, another comment, I think small groups is a good idea. And another individual, another kudos, Angela says, great session.
Wow. Well, I have to say it's made easier with everyone's active participation. So thank you for contributing to the chat so that folks are hearing not just from me, but from others' best practices as well. So thank you for that. And so really, I've come to the end of my presentation. I think we have a few minutes left. So are there any best practices that you would like to add to what was shared? And also, this is certainly an opportunity to please feel free to ask questions you might have on some of the best practices mentioned during today's presentation. So it's over to you. So either via chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, I'm gonna hand that over to the host to manage. Over to you, Shelley.
Well, thanks, Angela. Okay, everybody. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but hopefully on the behalf of everybody right now, this has been a wonderful, just wonderful, very engaged, active webinar, and exactly the way we want meetings to be with large groups. So thank you, Angela.